Alright, we are back in. Let's just carry on straight on from where we left off in the last part. So let's just start adding some details. As I mentioned at the end of the last part, this is all, I've mapped this all out by hand by manually placing every single hit and putting effects on each track and deciding everything manually. But it's pretty time consuming doing that, and just to kind of quickly add some stuff for more interest and to kind of generate it quickly. I'm going to show off some of the methods that I use for that. Let's just start by loading up. Let's just try Ultrabeat, right, for example. And I'm just going to load up a random kit in this. And these have all got like pre-made drum patterns in it. And I'm just going to play the drum pattern that this has in it, layered in over everything else that I've got here. So, hang on. Okay, so I'm just going to slap a kind of multi-effects plugin, something like Sugarbyte's Looperator, and this is a bit like Effectrix that I've shown off before. It's by the same company, Sugarbyte. And yeah, if I just kind of show you what this does to that drum loop, so hang on, I'll bypass Looperator and I'll just play the Ultrabeat thing first. So if I put Looperator on now, so we're kind of getting some cool stuff happening there just by scrolling through the presets, and a cool way to kind of actually like get quick sounds that are interesting like that is to just record the sound of changing presets, right? And the way to do that in Logic is if I select my Ultrabeat track here and I send it to a bus, let's send it to just, can be any bus, but let's just say it's bus 20, right? And I'm going to call that Looperator record. And if I create that track here, now so the audio of this Ghost Town kit track with the Looperator on it is being sent to this loop record track. And then what you have to do is create a blank audio track here, go to audio input and set that to be the bus Looperator record. And now you can see I've now got the option to record that there. If I did that on this track, it wouldn't record it as audio, and it won't record the changing of the presets to audio. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to hit record and do a bunch of fiddling now and just see what I kind of end up with. Cool, so that's given us a bit of stuff to work with there, right? So I'm actually going to just delete that now. And yeah, let me flatten that. Flatten and merge. Cool, so Looperator stuff and things. Looperator stuff and things. So yeah, we've now got ourselves a kind of selection of interesting effects and perks, and like, yeah, kind of up to you what you want to do there. You can either just leave it as like an entire, leave the entire audio file in it like that. So something that you can do is just kind of like go through and chop out moments that you think you like and that are doing something interesting with the rest of the groove that we've already established. So I'll just do a bit of that now. So like some of these things, they might be, I don't really like how that sounds, just how it's recorded. But for example, if I like maybe grab that and shift it over, I think that kind of made it a bit more interesting. I quite like that. So that was pretty cool. So that's some pretty cool stuff straight away there that we kind of generated out of that. Obviously you can get more interesting things that might be better than that. It's just about experimenting and messing about, basically. But yeah, another cool trick that we can do is get this out of Logic and into Ableton, because I really like some of the effects and the way that you can set things up for effects processing in there. Most of what I'm about to do, I think you can probably do it in Logic, but I just kind of like the workflow in Ableton for it, and I'll just kind of show you what I'm going to do. So I'm actually just going to make an audio file which is all of this in one audio file, so that I can like resample the whole beat. I'm just going to turn the gain down on the stereo out so that this audio file doesn't clip. Going to hit Command B to bring up the bounce menu. I'm going to make sure normalize is off. Just going to create an audio file of this, drums production, bounced, which is like bounce. If you don't know what that means, it means, yeah, creating an audio file of all of this. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to go into Ableton Live here. I'm going to make sure my tempo is set to the same value as Logic's here. And let's get that audio file. Cool. So let's check that out. I'm now here in Ableton, and this audio file is all of this here in Logic, right? But I've just imported it into Ableton as one file. And I should be able to loop that. It should loop perfectly. Cool, so I'm just going to set up some audio effects on this. Pretty much this is going to be quite similar to what I did with the IDM'y bass sound rig in my first video. So I'm pretty much just going to do what I did in that video, but apply it to drums instead of a bass synth and kind of see what happens here. So first thing to do is put the saturator on the end of that. Set the output to -6. Okay, cool. Let's load up an audio effect rack, and now let's just drag in a bunch of different sounds and see what happens. Just going to put some EQ before amp and everything, so I can kind of clean up any muddiness like going into this. So, and likewise for the top. Right, let's get out good old Beat Repeat and pop him on here. Change that to instrument mode. So, yeah, Beat Repeat. This will just like glitch out whatever you put through it, essentially, and I will talk through some of the controls quickly to show you how to get like interesting things out of it. So by default, chance, this knob here is set to 100%, and that is essentially going to determine how often this repeat button turns itself on. And if that's on, then the if that is on, then the effect is engaged, right? So if I just play a sound, hang on, if I just leave it on, and yeah, you can see that that little power light is coming on automatically. It's because of the chance knob, right? So if I turn that down, so I think it's nice to have that maybe at 50% so that it's not doing it constantly, but so that we get a little bit of it, right? The grid knob controls how fast or slow that stutter is happening, and yeah, we can kind of modulate that to make some exponentials, like that kind of thing. I like that. So yeah. Variation here is a bit like chance, and what this will do is essentially the higher that is, it will alternate this grid knob to a random value itself. So if I have that all the way at 0, it's only ever going to do a 16th note triplet, right? So it's just going to, every time I hit it, it's doing that. But if we turn up the variation, it will just do random shit by itself, which is cool. So yeah, this is what I kind of love about this method. That was hilarious. Yeah, then you've also got pitch decay, which is pretty cool. So let me start the repeat from fresh again there. So, oh, hang on. Let's put it on. So that's pretty sick. Can use that to great effect. And then finally, offset and interval. So I think by default, this chance knob, you can hear it's kind of turning itself on like on the one, that kind of thing. And with the offset knob, we can kind of make it start at a weirder point in the bar, which I think makes the glitches more kind of interesting. So just sort of fiddle with this a bit. And then I'm going to load up Texture by Devious Machines after that. Let's pop that on here. Now let's get some cool, like the Foley samples in this are cool. Going to adjust the... So you've got envelope controls here for the sample in Texture. Let me show you, hang on. So I'm basically using Beat Repeat, doing random stuff to my groove, which is feeding into Texture, and you can see now that's where I'm getting these like percussive rhythmic variations, and they're affecting the sample, they're triggering the sample in Texture. And yeah, with the gate I can have more or less of that come through. And hang on, let me change it to a slightly more. And yeah, you can kind of make things a bit clickier that way. And then if I stick a load of OTTs after this, it's going to like accentuate the clickiness and bring out even more kind of textural detail in these samples. So things will start getting pretty awesome in a sec. So let's do the good old copy paste OTT. Command V, fairly ridiculous, but yeah, so from having a bunch of OTTs, it turns that into that. That might be a bit much, but just turns some of them off. But yeah, I want it to have enough to, there we go. Yeah, now we're starting to get some pretty nuts shit by just like morphing between these two, right? I'm going to set up a track to just record a bunch of this nonsense. Glitches record, we'll call that. I'm going to set the audio from to, that's this track here, right? And if I arm the record button and now hit record, there we go, you can now see. So you can now see all of that nonsense is recording to audio here. So let's just do a bunch of that, right? Going to set up some modulation on the pitch of the sample in Texture so that this pitch knob moves by itself, so I don't have to use the mouse to do it, and that's just going to make things happen automatically for me again. So you see that? So here I'm changing the actual pitch of the sample, this audio loop, and yeah, that's obviously going into, that's pre this effects chain. So yeah, you can kind of get more crazy sounds out of it that way. But I think that's quite a good amount that it's given us there. And yeah, just one more thing that we can do. I'm going to duplicate this track so that I've got that effects chain happening again. But rather than using the drums production, rather than using a bounce of that, I'm going to load up Reaktor and a drum machine in that and just kind of do some random shit with the same effects chain, just to get some different textures to what I've recorded in this blob here, right? Let's just do that very quickly. Okay, so Reaktor is here and it has a lot of like built-in synths, drum machines, samplers, and like crazy stuff in it. Let's just load up something like this thing called L3, which is a really cool drum machine. You can like load different samples and different loops into all of these, and it like mixes and matches them. There'll be a video out there that covers this in depth better than I can talk about it, but we don't even need to get into learning how to use it. We can just use this method that I'm about to show you and get some cool stuff out of it. So let's give that a little play, see what that sounds like. Some of those sounds might actually be quite cool, like in context, but let's make it mental. Grab our audio effects chain here and copy it onto the Reaktor track. And now, okay, so let's just put one more effect in here. Let's put Sugar Bites, Looperator, after texture in this chain here, right? So okay. Whoa. Okay, so I'm going to set up one more audio track here. I'm going to call this Reaktor Stuff, and let's set that to the input is Reaktor. Now let's record a bunch of crazy stuff from this Reaktor track onto this track here. So I think that's given us quite a bit to work with here. We can just click, right click on that, go to Show in Finder, and now highlight that Reaktor stuff recording, and I'm just going to drag that back into our Logic session, and let's do the same with the glitches record. So right click it, Show in Finder, grab that, and then come into Logic, let's pop that in, and now we've got a bunch of sort of crazy material that we can start, we can stitch some chunks of this in, right? So let's see what it sounds like. So I think it's good to kind of find the coolest pieces in here, and then this is why so early on in the sort of first part of this, or the second part, I left these gaps in the acoustic drums groove, right? Because now I can do things like this. So, but yeah, let's find a cool bit to kind of slot in there. I'm going to default it and just have a listen through and see if there's any cool moments that I can pick out. So it's funny because it's like some of that is almost more interesting than anything that I was making by hand, and it took me a lot less time to make it. I used to think that like some of those kind of texturally really detailed and crazy sounds, I used to think like, oh man, that producer must have spent so long creating that and trying to get it to sound like that. And a lot of the time I think people are actually just using methods like this that you could never sort of manually create that. It's like you have to just set up a crazy effects change to just do a bunch of shit for you, I guess. And then you get all this gnarly stuff out of it. So I'm just going to do the same thing with that glitches record track. Woohoo! Fucking hell. See what I mean? Like, I didn't mean to end up with any of this, and there's some tasty shit going on here. So let's keep going quickly. So that's pretty ridiculous, but yeah, some cool ways of kind of building up a dense sounding drum groove with a few different techniques, and yeah, creative ways to use Logic and software. to create beats, I guess. To wrap up, I'm just going to give this a little playthrough. I hope you've enjoyed this insight into kind of constructing interesting hybrid grooves that are a mixture of acoustic drums and glitchy electro... bollocks.